You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, I know this is not on our list, but I figure if I don't bring it up, it's not going to get talked about again. I mentioned this right off the top. We have apparently 155,000 public servants all set to go on strike by as early as Friday, which is like half the labor force in this country, public labor force in this country. I'm just kind of curious. You don't think the government's going to let this thing happen, do you?
Well, the tradition is that, and we're talking about the feds here, the tradition is they all vote for a strike mandate, which is not the same as going on strike, to be used at an opportune time, so this is a shot across the government's bows. But don't forget, especially with the feds, and it's amazing how often this happens, they can't get too cheeky because the government, despite all its, we love you and why can't we all just get along, will pass back to work legislation at the drop of a hat. So to a certain extent, the unions are going into this fight, potential fight with one hand tied behind their back. On the other hand, you can't, I think they have some beefs there, like not getting paid for a few years between the Phoenix pay system. And quite frankly, it'll be interesting to see what comes up here because one thing that has become painfully apparent with the federal civil service is that nobody seems to be in charge. Nothing seems to be working very well, whether it's, passports or simple processing
airports,
of dealing with the feds, and it's like it's just, I won't go as far as Monsieur Poilievre to say it's broken, but it ain't working very well. So you really have to ask the question: will this too be an issue in terms of the negotiations? But yeah, I've been to this rodeo before, and the horses and bulls may snort, but there won't be no bucking broncs until they sit down at the table and somebody throws a chair. So I wouldn't freak out too much about it.
Yeah. By the way, that window they have is 60 days, right? They have 60 days to actually, from what you said, threaten to go on strike to actually have that window open to walk out.
Yeah, well, basically, you have to have the approval of the membership to basically walk out. So usually, especially with public sector unions, that's the first thing they do. They always take a strike mandate vote, so the negotiators can walk in there with that in their pockets and basically say, "I'd hate to do this, but let's speak seriously." Okay. But indeed, I believe most of the provincial public sector unions are in the same position. Yeah. I mean, they have in the past they've had day-long strikes and whatever. But yeah, nobody's and they realize there's a lot of stake here because on the one hand, there was a bite in terms of inflation, but the other thing as well is they also know whether we like it or not. And certainly in Quebec, the government's the biggest employer in the province, and to a certain extent, if everybody walks off at once, and God help us, even in the healthcare sector, even though there's essential services required, that's not the kind of thing governments want to get tangled up with. But even then, Quebec could turn around, I suspect, and pass back to work legislation. Okay. So it's a bit of a very delicate dance.
Fair enough.
I'm confused by your headline, so I want to get to it. Is it unfair to single out Quebec for lousy road conditions? I mean,
well, I gotta tell you, it's that time of year again. CAA Quebec have put out their vote for the worst road in Quebec contest. They've done this for this is the 8th year that they're doing it. And, it goes by region, and some of our biggest hits in Montreal, the Metropolitan Expressway, Gouin Boulevard, St. Denis Street, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners can turn around and say, well, no, my street's the worst one. Here's the thing, though, and I've mentioned this on air to you guys and in other contexts when I was on the radio. It's like we could be talking about, the end of the world. The end of the world is going to happen between now and the end of the show, and we still be getting calls about potholes on Coast Sigmund Road, right? Yeah. But we have to look at what's happened. And even in the past month, look at what's happened with the weather. Look at what's happened with the temperature. Look what's happening now with the temperature. You're going to have to wear your 30 sunscreen tomorrow, but bundle up and wear a scarf next week. These changes in temperatures don't really care about political affiliation or the efficiency of public service, employees. The fact is the roads keep, crumbling. And if there's any pressure that should be placed on the government, it's to find out, and because their excuse is also, we could, use other things. You can put in concrete, but it's going to be a lot more expensive, and if it cracks, we've got to replace the whole thing. It's not. Listen, according to CAA Quebec, I think your average Quebec motorist is spending about $250 a year on damage caused by potholes. So something's got to give. But on the other hand, we have to understand this is not because somebody's asleep at the switch. Okay, it's like somewhere in my imaginary world there's a mischievous little monkey playing with the weather machine and changing the temperature every other day. So I understand we've all lived with it. Well, our kids will probably have to live with it as well. But right now, the formula is one for Groundhog Day. Things are not going to change. So we can rant, we can rave, we can point fingers, but between patch jobs and the idea that, we do this because this is the way we've always done things, we're going to be doomed to this. So to a certain extent, folks, I know spring's coming. It's going to be a nice day for the next couple of days. Stay calm, be good, but just exhale very slowly the next time your car gets rattled. Even on streets, which I can assure you were pristine and perfectly flat and fine and velvety. Even if that was 6 months ago, I'm sure they're completely pockmarked by now. But once again, it's the price of living for the joie de vivre of being in Quebec.
And to be fair, to your point, I mean, I remember watching a report, I guess this was last year. We tend to live in a bit of a vacuum here when it comes to this, and we say we have the worst roads. I saw what they were living through in Edmonton and Winnipeg, and you know what? There's some pretty awful driving there, too.
Oh.
We're all getting this.
This is a losing
part
contest.
Of the country.
This is a terrible contest. It sucks for everybody. And then I'm thinking to myself, are these new Bixi winter bikes going to have, with the jumbo rubber tires, how are they going to weather the potholes, especially when they're covered in snow?
I got a bad feeling about this one, sorry.
Yeah.
I think they're really, it's one of those doomed expeditions up the Orinoco where nobody knows what's going to be around the next bend. Oh, it's really cool because Bixi is going to be clearing away the docking stations. It won't be the City of Montreal.
Yeah.
City of Montreal owns Bixi. Okay, let's be clear here. But what gets me is last I heard these are solar powered, which is fine. I'm presuming the solar power will still work in the middle of winter. But, there's a certain amount of electrical circuitry in there. And what gets me about this is if the temperature goes, and I'm not joking here, if the temperature goes from minus 30 one day to maybe plus 5 the next day, what's that going to do to the circuitry if you want to actually pay for this thing, if you want to use your credit card or put in your card, your Bixi pass? The other thing, and I speak now as a cyclist, and I don't want to be too forward here, but do you really think there are that many Montrealers who are really going to want to, how can I put it, sit on a frozen bicycle seat just for the sake of saying, "Oh, look at me! This thing's got studded tires."
Whoa!
I mean,
they're not heated
from the waist down. I think you got problems, and I think that Bixi ride may have been more costly than you imagine.
Hey, Jim, Natasha she doesn't understand the bikes are not heated in the winter. What? How's that possible?
Oh, you mean no, Natasha, the bikes are not heated.
I want a warm bum and I want warm hands if I'm going to be.
No, but this is what gets me. There are people out there. They suit up for this kind of thing.
Yeah, we see them.
They got the weather gear. You think they're sailing around Cape Horn. They got the weather gear. They're out there. They're happy as the proverbial clown. And, of course, the tires on these things, right, are like, my God, they're like those big inner tubes we used to float around in when we were kids. Yeah. That's cool. I just don't think that this is going to be a main – I mean, best of luck to Bixi. I just don't think this is going to be a mainstream activity for a lot of Montrealers, at least Montrealers who actually live here in the winter.
By the way, I should point out, this is a big deal. I'm not sure, they're expanding service, right, beyond just for the 12 months. They're adding more stations, and apparently Pierrefonds Roxborough is going to be getting Bixi service as well. So for the folks out there, congratulations, I guess.
Well, that'll be great because, nothing says progress like being able to experience a minus 50 wind chill where you're actually traveling at 15 kilometers an hour.
They just want their power back. I don't think they're too concerned about Bixis right now.
This is their bone for not having their power, right? They're going to get Bixi in the winter.
This is it, yeah, exactly. They'll get Bixi, street clowns.
Like Jim Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adamant.